Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Yes, hello, Gertrude. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Marie Quintana. I currently live in Dallas, Texas. And about 3 months ago, I published my memoir. And I have to tell all of you, first of all, that it was probably the most courageous thing I've ever done. I worked on this book for probably 12 years. The book is called The Last Flight from Havana, and it tells the story of my life. I was born in a small town in Cuba. The town is called Havana. It is about 2 hours outside of Havana. And as a small child, I lived in a beautiful town where my grandfather was a farmer. He was actually the third largest rice farmer in Cuba. Lived a wonderful life. My mother and father, my father was in the sugarcane industry. And in the late 1950s, early 1960s, communism came to Cuba. And as a small child, I went through a very traumatic time. Through my mother's eyes, I was able to write part of this story because I was very frightened. We had guns going off outside. My grandfather's property was taken away from him. He was actually sent to jail in the middle of the night. And my mother tells the story. I was frightened. I was hiding under my bed. I didn't want to come out. And my father and my mother worked together to find a way for us to get out of Cuba. My father was in the sugar industry and was working already in the United States for periods of time. So he was in the United States, and he asked for my mother, my brother, and I to come to the United States. And that's when we left Cuba. The book, again, is called The Last Flight from Havana. And the reason it is called that is because we were on the last commercial flight to shut down Havana Airport in the early 1960s. The flight was from Havana to New Orleans. And so, as you can imagine how traumatic it was, my mother and father, so frightened, having to leave their family, their homes, and at the airport, it was chaotic. The first chapter of my book actually is through my mother's eyes. So it was, how we had to leave and the traumatic experience of having to say goodbye to our family. We arrived in New Orleans, and it was Thanksgiving Day. We didn't know what Thanksgiving was, obviously, coming from a country we didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, and arrived in New Orleans. Were immediately taken through and living in the refugee projects. Catholic Charities helped us to have pots and pans. We were only able to take 40 pounds of clothing out of the country. And as we settled in the United States, the story is about my life. I was the oldest. I felt a huge responsibility and accountability to take care of my parents. I actually, in looking back, felt like I had to make it right for them. So you can imagine how conflicted it was for me as a child, and yet having to grow up so quickly and learn the language. My father was able to find work in a very small town on the Mississippi River between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. and this town was called Reserve. And we were the first Hispanic family to settle in Reserve, which you can imagine how difficult that was. No one there really understood what we had gone through. We had lost our homes, our families, and everyone there didn't even know, part of what the news was going on. In those days, we didn't have Hispanic television or anything like that. So I had to be the one to translate everything for my parents. I went to school, and in school, I was teased, I was made fun of. And actually, one of the chapters in the book is called The White Dress Day, because to me, it was a defining moment. What happened was my first grade teacher gave us some instructions on what to do for picture day. And I thought this was going to be the day that I was going to fit in. So I ran home and told my mom that I needed to wear an all white outfit. And my mom said, "First of all, you don't have a white outfit, and no, we don't have any money to go buy you one." And so I was so upset, and she knew how upset I was at school. So she somehow found a way to buy some fabric, and she sewed a white shirt and a skirt, and we somehow found white shoes and socks for me. And I went to school that day. My father drove me, and as I approached the schoolyard, I looked across, and all the children were wearing all the colors of the rainbow. And at that moment, I knew I had it all upside down. I had it wrong. I misinterpreted the teacher. My father drove up to where he had to drop me off, and I looked at him in tears and said, "Please, Daddy, don't make me do this. I don't want to go in. I'm always teased, and it's going to be a really difficult day for me." And, my dad said, and this still makes me cry. I mean, it was a very emotional time. He said, "Listen, we've been through such hard times, and we're going to go through some hard times, but you've been through it, and you know how to get through it. And you're going to go in there, hold your head high, and know that you are strong, and you're going to get through this day." And I walked into the school, and it was absolutely horrible. The children teased me. It was a terrible, terrible day, but I call this day my defining moment. And it's been so interesting because I haven't really talked about my career, but I went on in my career to be an executive in multiple companies. And as I was going through the ranks of one of my careers, I had someone come up to me and said they wanted to include me in a book of the top 50 women trailblazers in some of the corporations, and I agreed. And she started asking me about this white dress day, and I thought, "Oh no, I can't even talk about this." I was just so ashamed and so upset about the day, and actually worked through it and came to call it my defining moment, because I used that moment to fuel my strengths as I went through my life. I knew that I was walking into a fire, I was going through a really difficult time, but I also knew that I had the love of my parents and that I was going to get through that day as I got through so many other days. And so as I, continue with this memoir, the story is also about just how difficult it was for me to assimilate, because on one hand, my parents were so Cuban. They only ate Cuban food. They had their bags packed. They did not want to be here. They wanted to be home. On the other hand, I'm living in an American place where there was, like, at that time, 3 to 6% of the population were Hispanic, and I wanted to fit in. So I moved away from my culture, and, just through life, I just, loved my parents and wanted to be with them, but I did not want to be Cuban. I just wanted to do everything different. As time went on, we moved to New Orleans, and I went to school at a high school where I found a friend. It was like my first friend, like someone, like, if you can imagine, just like when you meet your best friend for life, which she still is. And her family became my family. And, it was an assimilation, but, I continued through my life in a very conflicted times. My grandparents at that time, the chartered flights from Cuba were opening up, and they came to live with us. So now I had 3 generations living in the house, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, know about what happened in Cuba and all the families and everything we left behind. I didn't want to know about that. As I said, I went on to college. I got a degree, and my career is like multidimensional. So as I grew up, I had my master's in clinical social work. I decided that I wanted to go into business. So I started a role at IBM as a systems engineer. At the time, IBM was looking for people with masters in some sort of the arts, and we learned assembler programming and business. I went through an 18-month program with them. I went on to have an amazing career with IBM. And then I left IBM and I went to work for Perot Systems. I was very involved in actually, I'm not going to even get into it because I won't have time, but I was very involved in a case where a child was kidnapped, and I went to Costa Rica looking for a child. I came back. I was an executive at PepsiCo. I was the vice president of technology during a time when PepsiCo was consolidating multiple companies. And I was also then later on the senior vice president of marketing and sales for multicultural markets, and developed the strategy for how PepsiCo was going to bring in more consumers from different types of ethnic backgrounds and develop products that were more in line with their taste. I've done startups, and recently I was executive vice president of Tenet Healthcare. And in all of that, the most important thing though is that I went back to Cuba. I took my mom and I went back, and I found myself. I found my aunt and my uncles, and where I thought the trip was going to be meaningful for her, it was so meaningful for me, and it changed my life. My aunt had kept my baby book with little piece of hair, and my life changed. I've been through a lot of adversity, and I have had an amazing faith that through it all, God has really opened up so many moments for me. And I'm very blessed to be in every single one of those. So really, like I said, it took a lot of courage to put your life out there for others to read. I'm so proud that I did. I did it for my parents. I did it for myself, and I did it for those that want to be inspired and know that it's not easy. It's not always easy, that you have to go through a lot of adversity, but to know that, through yourself, your family, your faith, you can do that, and you can do amazing things in your life.
Wow. Just listening to your story, Marie, it is just incredible how when you look at somebody on the surface, you can make assumptions of what kind of a life experience somebody has had. For someone of African descent, listening to you being in the US, you look European, one would have thought you would have fitted in, instantly, but you didn't. It's just incredible, the life experiences that we all go through at different places and different levels. Now, your book, your story, is a powerful testament to resilience and identity. What do you hope that your readers will take away from your story?
It's interesting because I've already gotten so much feedback of readers that have been inspired because they at times did not fit in. And they tell me their white dress day, which has really sometimes even brought me to tears, because they felt that they were at a moment in time where whatever, was it cultural or something was going on in their lives and they didn't feel they fit in, and how you can go through that and get to the other side. My book is also about a lot of loss, because of I lost a son, and I do talk about that with the grieving and how, working as an executive and having to deal with family and all that happens with that. And that, through my faith, through really being part of just an amazing loving family, you also find a way to get through it. And then the identity, I mean, I didn't fit in, and so it's okay, but you go through it and then you find yourself. And at the end of the book, I have the 3 lessons which have really been my guiding posts, and that is, know that you can start over. And I have started over and over in my life, whether it's marriage, personal, professional. The second thing is, you have to be authentic. I could not have done any of this if I were not true to myself. So really being true to yourself first. And
Mm.
thirdly is living your legacy now. Don't wait for a legacy that is going to be there after you pass away. Every moment, every decision you make every day is part of your living legacy. And those are the three lessons in the book that I discuss at the end of the last chapter.
Some real gems and nuggets that can help people when they're challenged in life. So, how did your early experiences of cultural adaptation and personal growth influence your approach to your career in the corporate world, especially in the roles with companies like IBM and PepsiCo?
Well, I'm a risk taker. I always think about this immigrant mentality. I feel that I have to work harder than the person next to me. And that is just something ingrained in me. And it wasn't that I went to school and learned all of this. A lot of this I learned on the job. And, always testing myself and reading and staying up late and understanding information, being curious, asking questions, finding mentors and sponsors along the way, and networks of people that hold you up and support you. But I've never been afraid to take a role that has been, something that, some people might say, how can you be qualified to be a systems engineer when you have a master's in clinical social work? Well, I did it. I go through the fire. It's like that white dress day, that defining moment. I know I can go through the fire, and I know that I can figure it out and learn on the other side.
Yeah, most immigrants have got that ingrained in them just based on the experience of being implants. So, with over 30 years of experience in strategic marketing and digital transformation, what do you consider to be the most significant changes in the marketing landscape during your career? And how are you using that now to market and promote your book?
Yes. Well, the biggest, I think one of the biggest transformations is just really the consumer is really in charge of, before it was, how companies can drill messages and send messages and ads and commercials. And now the consumer gets to choose, and they get to choose. And it's a much more profound relationship with that consumer. I mean, it's on a personal level. So it's not like you can just put an ad out and not be authentic. So I think the authenticity of just really being yourself and
Yes.
connecting at an emotional level and connecting at the heart. So we used to connect at the mind, but it's really
Yeah.
about connecting at the heart. And I think that's where the marketing for my book has really come in.
So you're literally harnessing all of those skills now. Now, as the CMO and EVP for communications at Tenet Healthcare, you led a significant brand transformation. Can you share some of the key strategies and challenges involved in launching this brand on a national scale? And again, how you're applying this in the marketing and promoting yourself as a new brand, as an author.
Yes, yes, I love it. I have such wonderful, wonderful memories of working at Tenet Healthcare. If you can imagine stepping into the second largest, public healthcare system at a time when COVID hit. So we really were at the epicenter of that. And so when I started Tenet, they really did not have a marketing program. One of the things that they had not done is to understand even the ethnicity of the consumer. I can remember going in and looking at even some of the websites and some of our very ethnic markets and saying, this person does not look like the people that are coming into the hospital. So the first thing we did is to really hone in on the regional localization of each of the hospitals and ensure that in the markets, for example, that were in Hispanic markets, whether it was El Paso or San Antonio, that we had bilingual
Yeah.
commercials, that the commercials were in Spanish, that we had brochures and information in Spanish. So really using some of the skills that I had at PepsiCo when was a SVP of multicultural sales and marketing. And then again, knowing that, a consumer wakes up one day and has to make a decision whether they're going to go to school, to work, or an event happens and they have to go to a doctor or to a hospital. And so you
Yes.
ask yourself, what are the decision points? How do they make those choices? And understanding again how to connect to them, how to be personal, and how to personalize those messages are really what's so important. So the whole national campaign was called Community Built on Care. So it was really about the care that the physicians and the nurses gave to all of the patients. And we use real doctors and nurses for this. We didn't go out when we did a commercial, when we did brochures, we used the nurses and doctors in those local hospitals. And it was beautiful to see how the community just opened up their arms to them. It was just, just a really beautiful, heartfelt commercials and activation of a campaign.
So you've been a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion throughout your career. A lot of this has got to do with your own intersectionality and personal experiences, correct?
Correct.
How has that been your biggest strength?
Oh, correct. From the very beginning, when I started corporate America, I was very close to understanding diversity and the differences that everyone brought to the table. I was fortunate that I was an executive sponsor to many of the employee resource groups, and whether they were the Asian group, African American, Hispanic, and it was always a cultural thing. I remember one time sitting in a meeting at PepsiCo where one of the Asian employees said, I don't raise my hand in a meeting. And I don't raise my hand in a meeting, not because I don't know anything, because my culture says to be respectful of those that are speaking. And so, you go into a meeting thinking everybody's going to be assertive and aggressive and raise their hands and ask questions, but there's some cultural nuances that you have
Yes.
to understand and respect and really accept. And I love that. I love getting to know them. I love supporting them. I loved, bringing then when on the business side products that really celebrated their communities and celebrated all the holidays. And, everywhere whatever company I went to, I looked at that to say, how can we celebrate the diversity and ethnicity that we bring? And of course, our consumers love that, right? I mean, it's like, but you have to be authentic is the thing. If a company tries to do that on their own and they don't connect, you can tell that immediately. Immediately, consumers know that.
You really have brought all of your life experiences to your work, your job. Let's talk a little bit about your other challenges in life. You said that the life of an immigrant comes with a lot of ups and downs and trials and tribulations. The loss of your son, can we touch on that a little bit?
Yes, of course. My oldest son, just the most beautiful, caring, loving servant leader. Just started to have, we thought it was at first Asperger. It ended up as he got older to have mental illness. And he, as in high school, he had some difficulty, although he was one of the top students in the class who was always able to do his work. But as time passed, he had to go for medication. He was, manic at times and had some difficult. And he was in a hospital when he passed away. He had to go in to get his medicine. Sometimes he just forgets to take it, and we always knew he would have to go in and redo the medicine. And at the time that the facility took him off his current medicine and gave him something else that caused him to have a pulmonary embolism. So
Oh,
my son died in the hospital, and what the really difficult part of that was that it was the week that I had remarried. So I found the love of my life, who happens to be a physician, a pulmonologist, and we were at our wedding, which he was supposed to go to in Florida, where my family lives. But we decided it probably wasn't right for him to go that week because
mm,
of this, event that he had. And when I came home from my wedding, I got a call from the hospital that he had passed away.
oh,
So I had a wedding on a Saturday and a funeral 7 days later. And so
oh,
the same family that went to the wedding turned around and came to the funeral, and, angels carrying me for months. So, very difficult to go through that, have gone through and also helped other mothers that have lost their sons. I think when I was at Tenet, I had several people that I worked with closely that had lost their sons for some reason. God puts you in situations where after you go through something, you now can help others. And
yeah,
I've always felt like everything I've gone through it for a reason. And I am now able to help others with that. And, he, it'll be 7 years this year, and he is with me. He's with me all the time. Feel his presence. He's, still servant leader. We have a scholarship at the school where he went to, and I was just there recently to give someone the servant leader scholarship that of my son. And so he is so loved at this school. Oh my goodness, just standing ovation for him. And so, we go through trials, you know, and we don't know how it happens, why it happens, but I do know, everything is there for a reason, and God puts us in a place where He knows that He's never going to leave us alone, and He's going to find a way to support us, and He has. He supported us, supported me in blessed ways. My mom is still alive, and she's 96, and I thought I couldn't have the wedding in Dallas because of her, so I go to Florida, and there she is, and she came to the funeral. It's like, oh my goodness, what is
Wow,
this?
that's so beautiful. Wow, life has definitely thrown a few challenges in your path, but like you say, if you get through those challenges, you become a teacher.
That's right.
God will never give you something that you
Hmm.
can't overcome. Now,
Exactly.
let me teleport you into the future. I'm going to have a little thought experiment, and I'm going to teleport you to the 90-year-old you, and you're sitting on your porch in your rocking chair, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren. If I could teleport you into the future to go and have a conversation with the future you, based on what life has taught you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet this amazing woman who's led you to that point?
Wow, that almost makes me want to cry. I think I'll say that it's going to be okay. That a lot of the times when it was hard and it was dark, that you're going to be able to pull through it because there are times when you didn't really think you could, right? And that you're enough, and that you're so loved and you've done well. That's a powerful one. You caught me off guard.
Yeah, I love
Wow.
asking that question, Marie, because a lot of women
Wow.
don't realize that the wise woman is already in them. She's already here. She's that little voice that guides you, that says, go left, go right, say yes, say no. But as women, we look outside of ourselves for the answers than going within. So I really thank you for connecting with that question
Ah,
because you
wow.
really got it right.
Yeah.
She is already
You
here with
totally.
you
I didn't think of
every
you.
step of the way.
Yeah.
Wow. What an amazing interview. Thank you. So,
Thank
what are
you.
your future aspirations? What is in the future for Marie? You've had a remarkable success in so many aspects, but what are you looking at both professionally
Right.
and personally now?
First of all, with the book, I am going to translate it to Spanish, which I'm very pleased. My mother's so excited about this.
Mhm.
So it's, really giving back with that. And I love speaking. I mean, I've always loved speaking. So I hope to do more of that. I used to speak a lot, whether it's PepsiCo or customers, whether it's a women's panel or keynote speaker, just helping other women, inspiring them and really being there for them.
Yes.
I'm doing some business consulting on the side also. We have a profit optimizer. I'm always thinking financially of helping other stores and retail stores. So I do have a software that I'm working on. But here's what I know. God has always surprised me. Always. In these remarkable roles that I've had in remarkable companies. It's not like I planned this career and it happened. No, my career was like one day God knocked on the door and said, "Here's what I want you to do." So I also know that this is the tip of the iceberg and that he's going to come in with something so big and so huge. And I'm going to say, "Really, Lord? You really want me to do this now? I've done all these other things." And so that I also know is coming. I just don't know when and where because it's really his time.
Oh, I love it. It sounds to me like your faith has carried you and will continue to carry you in this life. And that is
It
just
really has.
beautiful to listen to and to observe. A lot of times we do forget that we have all these plans
That's
that
right. They
we
go out
have
the
for
window.
ourselves, and the plans turn into something completely different. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming online today and sharing your amazing story with us. I feel honored and really blessed that we were connected the way we were. You are on a mission to change the world, definitely. And I would love to keep track with you and see where you go from here. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here. Thank you. It's a blessing.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. As you know, the Her Story Circle is a movement. We share stories of women from all over the world to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, and motivate you. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her